Hi, everybody. Okay, so common sense is dead. All right. As leaders, we like to think that our people are run by their conscious brain, right? Their awake, aware, alert brain, that they're being rational, that they're thinking, okay? But in reality, people are largely run by their subconscious beliefs. So that's their patterns, their habits that they've developed, most of the time before the age of 8. And quite frankly, it's their beliefs about themselves that are really running the show. Okay, so I want to give you a few examples and show you how this is highlighted. So for the first thing, let me talk to leaders. So this example is specifically in the education field, and it's something that actually happened to me. I was in this story, so I was consulting with a young teacher. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but the long and short of it is that this young teacher was not performing, and her boss called me in and said, "Can you please help her?" Now, in essence, what the boss wanted me to do was to come in and tell her what to do, right? You need to do X, Y, and Z. In reality, I knew, hey, listen, it's probably not a conscious, a knowledge thing, right? It's not about the data. If she passed school, she probably knows what to do, right? But it's usually about a belief. And so I came in and I started working with her. And the thing that I noticed first off, number one, she was very young. Very young. And she was also younger than all of the parents of the students that she was teaching. And she had a belief from childhood that when somebody is older than you, they are your elder. And so you need to show them a different kind of respect, right? And part of that idea of respect in her meant, not question them, not tell them what to do, right? Well, the problem was that this teacher, she was in a position where she really needed to speak into somebody's life, still with an amount of respect, but her belief kept her from being able to do that. And so as I walked her through that and understanding that belief and really, the rest of the story I typically use in trainings where we're talking about coaching. But the point of that example is really to show you, she wasn't operating based on what she knew, right? I mean, if she had to take a test on parent engagement, she probably could pass the test. But in order to do the thing, it was the belief that was holding her back. Now, let me give you an example of teachers with students. Okay, so, I have had students before who did not believe that they could read. Right? Somebody in their life had told them before that they really stunk at reading. Typically what it was is that, a progressing leader or reader would stand up in the middle of the crowd, right? So here you go, you've got some fear attached to that one. And because they're learning and they're growing in their reading, they're not fluent. And when they go to read out loud, well, now they have people around them who, let's face it, many of them are struggling. But if I turn, my thoughts and my ideas on you, then I won't get it, right? So it's the perfect storm of a situation to turn a reader into a non-reader, okay? Or a student who comes to me and says, I don't know how to do math. Yeah, you do. You can learn this, right? But you see, it's not the knowledge that's holding them back. It's the fear or the belief, the way that they see themselves that's keeping them from their success, okay? Now, the last example I'm going to use is more general for parents. All right, so I don't care what age your children are, they are run by how they see themselves. And how they see themselves, let's face it, you have a large part in that. Okay? Now that's for a whole nother podcast series. But for this example, thinking about this, I remember, so I've got 2 daughters. I've got 3 kids, but I've got 2 daughters. So my youngest is about to turn 11, and then I've got my 13-year-old. So a couple years difference. Now my 13-year-old has a very natural artistic ability. She just has always had that ability, okay? My 11-year-old, she is very good at art. She just thinks about it in a different way. She's much more mathematical, okay? And so when they were very young, and I mean, when my youngest was 2, 3, 4, she would get very frustrated because Hannah could do art so much better than she could. And she was internalizing that, saying, I am a bad artist. When in reality, no, you're just a different artist. And guess what? She's got 2 years on you, right? So it's our job to notice, not just when, a child can do something right or wrong, good or bad, right? But really to begin to notice, what are they telling themselves about whatever this is, right? So whether you're a leader, a teacher, a parent, an influencer, right? You're an influencer, and all of us have influence over somebody, so therefore it's all of us, right? What can we do? Because it would be great if we could just show up to work and tell our employees, hey, go do this, and they would just do that, right? I mean, gosh, that would make the world a better place, wouldn't it? Okay, so what do we do until then? So one thing is just to recognize that they are being run by beliefs, not necessarily a conscious choice. Okay? There's something in them that's running the show rather than this rational thinking. Okay? So, people like to say common sense, but in reality, it's not common and there's no sense to it. Okay? I always like to say common sense is a flower that doesn't grow in everyone's garden. Okay? But the thing is that we all have our own garden, and that's our mind, and our beliefs are those flowers, right? And so we look at our garden and our flowers and we say, hey, this is common sense, when somebody else has a completely different kind of garden. Okay? So recognizing we have different gardens, we see things differently, is the first step. The second one is really to try to acknowledge or notice it. Okay? So while the first step is more of a general, like, oh yes, we all think differently, right? The second step is to acknowledge and notice it about that other person. Okay? And the third one is to, whenever possible, instill positive beliefs. So, sometimes I'll teach a certain leadership type that tends to be, if you know the DISC profile, D-I-S-C, they tend to be the very high D. They're a little more demanding, a little more direct, right? Some people look at them as bossy. Sometimes when I'm coaching them, I'm really coaching them through, how do you celebrate somebody's success? Because that's not on their radar. Now, they want everybody to have success. The celebration part is not necessarily innate to them. And so when I'm working with them, it's really, how do you celebrate that? And they don't realize how important that is to other people. But you see, when you're celebrating with somebody, what are you really doing? You're acknowledging them. You are instilling a positive belief of, this thing worked for you. Good job. Keep doing it. And so when a D-type person who is very much about results and success, when they can understand when you celebrate, guess what? That person thinks and feels differently, which, they're not always about feelings, but it drives them in a different way, and you're going to have more success. Okay? So even in that example, see, different gardens of thinking. So as tempting as it is to think that we all run on that rationalization or common sense, that's just not reality. So a couple things that you could do. Number one is just notice this for yourself. What beliefs are driving your behavior? Okay? And then start noticing that for others. Listen, if you plug into this work, guess what? You're going to find all kinds of tips and tools. But I really wanted to address this idea of common sense, because it's not common and it's not sensical. And if we understand that belief really does drive our behavior, that's the best place to start. Okay? So with that, I release you into the wild. Go forth and prosper. Have an amazing day, and we'll catch you next time. All right. Bye-bye.